Lurking in Bangladesh is something truly sinister. You won't see it coming, but once it enters the body, it stays for life. Coming up, the toxic metal being mined, mishandled and dumped in their homes, and the people poisoned in silence, powerless and ignored. They call Bangladesh a hotspot for waste and pollution, but that's not the full story. Because in the flood zones and slums, locals are pushing back and reimagining how to live with water.
It can float when it floods. It can stand against every level of storm.
This is just 2 degrees. Where Bangladesh is already living the future, the rest of us fear.
Cyclones are getting worse, the flooding is getting worse. What happens in 20 years from now?
If this is go on, I don't know whether Bangladesh will be Bangladesh or we will drown.
Bangladesh is a country built on water. It carves through the land, nourishes rice fields, and sustains the lives of millions. But that water is changing. The monsoons are getting more violent, the rivers more unpredictable, and the floods. Every year, entire neighborhoods vanish under muddy water. And when it recedes, what's left behind isn't just damage, it's disease, displacement, and despair. In the capital, Dhaka, one of the world's most densely populated cities, the poorest are pushed to the margins and crammed into informal settlements that flood every time the skies open. These are more like battlegrounds than they are homes.
Bangladesh's story is full of contrasts. Vibrant city set behind enormous challenges. But as the city keeps growing, its path to resilience isn't just urgent, it's essential.
But not all threats announce themselves with thunder and waves. There is one hair that hides in plain sight, that seeps into soil, into air, and into the bloodstream of children. It's lead, a toxic metal that's slowly robbing an entire generation of its future. And in Bangladesh, it's practically everywhere.
Lead can be in the household. It can be in the toys that the children play with. It can be in the food that they eat, even in the water they drink, and even where the child plays. So outside. And how does this happen? So for instance, if in the area where they stay, if around where they stay there are these informal used lead acid battery recycling sites close to the vicinity of the household, where they are breaking apart lead acid batteries and smelting them, you have lead dust and lead fumes in the air, and this settles on the soil around the household, and children will go play, and then they put their hands in their mouth, they can get lead poison. And if any of the parents works in these informal recycling areas and comes home, they have the lead dust all over them, that also poses a high risk of exposure to the children.
This used to be a lead acid battery recycling plant tucked away in the Bangladeshi village Fubaria. It's been shut since April, but not before it wreaked absolute havoc. For 10 years, it dumped acid waste into the local wells, ponds and fields.
ওরা যেই অ্যাসিডের পানি আমাদের খেতে ফালানো শুরু করছে তখন থেকে আমাদের ক্ষেতগুলা একদম মাটি পুইরা
Rakib Hasan was one of the few who stood up and spoke out. He helped shut the place down. Now he's being hit with charges, trespassing and theft. Retaliation, he says. Locals say it's all connected. Factory bosses and politicians scratching each other's backs.
মানে তার পেটের মধ্যে বিশাল সমস্যা এই প্রেগনেন্টের যে বাচ্চা বাবু মারা গেছে এই বাবু
The factory denied all of it when we contacted them, but what's undeniable is what's been left behind. The fish are gone, and the livestock are dying. And in Sohail's case, a family torn apart. A photo of his wife still hangs over their bed. She died 3 years ago.
পানির দ্বারা এই যে আমাদের বাড়ির টিউবওয়েল এই যে এই বিলের পাশে এনে পানি আমরা চাপ দিলে তল থেকে উঠে ওইটা যে বউ মানে প্রেগনেন্ট ছিল এই সে তো সুস্থ ছিল মানে হঠাৎের মধ্যে এরকম হয়ে গেছে ডাক্তার এনে নিয়ে গেছি ডাক্তার বলতেছে সাসপেক্ট
Lead is a silent killer, and the way it's being recycled in Bangladesh is leaving a trail of bodies. Kids are getting sick, crops are dying, and entire communities are being poisoned. Slowly, brutally.
Are they still drinking this water?
No, this is not drinkable. Few days ago, there is no water, just soil.
Phosphate, like acid.
Yes, phosphate, that's it.
There is some irony here, as lead batteries are powering the so-called green transition. They keep more than 4 million rickshaws moving in Dhaka and beyond. But around 85% of those batteries are recycled illegally, and children are the ones paying the price.
এখানে অ্যাসিডের ছিল তারপর আমরা খেলতে পারতাম না তারপর গন্ধ আসতো শব্দ আসতো তার খেলতে পারতাম না আর বিকালে এসে আমরা খেলতাম পরে যেগুলো দিয়ে মেলা ব্যাটারি ফালাইতো তারপর ওগুলা আমরা ওখানে ফেলায় দিয়ে আসতাম তারপরে আমরা ওখান থেকে কাগজ আনি
UNICEF and the Bangladeshi NGO Pure Earth have mapped out over 300 toxic sites across the country, though the World Bank says it could be 3 times that.
Pregnant women or children, they are the vulnerable group, and lead has a severe impact on this group of people, especially on pregnant women. This can cause pregnancy complications like stillbirth, premature birth, or miscarriage. Lead stored in the bone of a woman can be released during the pregnancy, and it can harm the fetus. So the child, if it burns, that can also be impacted by lead poisoning.
And the thing about lead, it doesn't just disappear when the factory doors close. It stays in the air, in the soil, in the water for decades. Shutting a plant is one step, but the damage is already carved into the land. For every child born in Bulgaria, the fight against lead begins with their very first breath.
How do parents even know if their kid has been exposed to lead? Are there signs you can actually see?
I think it's very difficult for a parent to know whether their child is poisoned by lead because, with lead poisoning, the signs are more or less invisible and the symptoms tend to show decades after exposure to lead. So a parent may have a child who is exposed to lead, has lead poisoning, but they will never know. Because the only way you can tell that a child has lead poisoning is by testing the child's blood. There is no level of lead that is safe in the blood.
So what exactly does lead do to a child's brain? Are we talking slow learning or something more serious?
So what lead does is it affects the brain cells. So it more or less is destroying the brain cells. And it damages the brain cells and prevents the child from being able to learn. Not just the learning, but they are also not able to recollect, like remember what they learned. They tend to forget easily. They are not able to pay attention in class, and they don't do well in class. So that causes not just like short-term effects, like the child is not able to learn, but also the child is not able to attain their full potential.
Is there anything regular families can do to protect themselves right now?
There's a lot families can do right now. And they are very simple things. And once they know and they have the information and they know what lead is, the sources of lead, how they get exposed, and how they can prevent or remove the exposure, they can do a lot. One basic simple thing is hand washing with soap and running water. So, children play outside, and most of the time it is what they ingest. And so children hand washing as frequently as possible is one of the key things.
Lead is the villain of this episode, but like most bad guys, wasn't always evil. Here's a Just to Matter, our spotlight on the small stuff that quietly shapes our world. We blame lead for sick kids, poisoned water, and contaminated soil. And all that is true. But here's what might surprise you. Lead actually matters. Not in your blood, but in your batteries, buildings, and even your emergency backup power. For centuries, lead has been a workhorse. It doesn't rust, it's easy to shape, and in small amounts, it can be incredibly useful. Today, more than 85% of all lead is used in batteries, especially for vehicles and renewable energy storage. Even the solar-powered future needs a bit of this heavy metal. The problem isn't lead itself, but how we mine it, melt it, and toss it aside. In places with weak regulation, lead leaches into neighborhoods, water supplies, and food chains. And it's children whose bodies absorb more who pay the highest price. So maybe the question isn't how we ban lead forever, but rather how we treat it with the respect it deserves. Recycle it safely, handle it responsibly, and use it only when we absolutely must. Because in the right hands, lead is just a tool. It's only poison in the wrong ones. Bangladesh was once written off as a failed state. Millions were malnourished after the country had been exploited for decades. But after gaining independence from Pakistan in 1971, a fragile new nation was born. The first government, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, laid the foundation for rural development and social reform. Then, after 1975, under successive governments, Bangladesh started its transformation from a so-called basket case to a global example of economic progress.
To come this far, it's such a small country, such a huge population, so resource constrained. Talk about climate vulnerability, we are the number 6 in the world in terms of climate vulnerability. So to be able to feed the mouth of all these 190 million people in such a small country, and then to be able to prosper, that itself is a miracle.
But Bangladesh's transformation didn't happen in a vacuum. There was lots of help along the way. NGOs stepped in to fill in critical gaps in education, healthcare, and financial access by empowering women and supporting rural communities. Asif Saleh runs South Asia's biggest NGO, the Bangladesh Rural Advancement Committee. At the heart of BRAC is a philosophy to always extend a hand to those in need. And it's done just that, reaching tens of millions of people in Bangladesh alone. Every year, supporting health, education, microfinance, and livelihoods. BRAC also took up the challenge to expand its mission when salt water began flooding agricultural lands. Rivers shifted, and millions became at risk of losing their homes and livelihoods.
Bangladesh is predicted to lose about 17% of its land by 2047. Now, this is not going to happen on one fine morning in 2047. This is happening gradually.
But the climate crisis isn't just about erratic weather. It's also about resources. Bangladesh doesn't have the money to help all of its most vulnerable communities adapt and thrive, so BRAC assists where it can. Meet Golam Rabbani, a climate expert with 2 decades of experience under his belt. He's helped shape how Bangladesh and the region thinks about adaptation.
Climate Risk Fund is a small finance mechanism established by BRAC with support from the government of Germany through KfW. And Climate Risk Fund actually, supports the climate migrants, and their different type of problems they face in the different urban areas. So we support the local level NGOs to implement small-scale adaptation actions so that these most vulnerable people are benefited from that.
You know, the news in general, as you probably would have known, has been replete with images of global wars. Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza. There's not a lot of news that talks about the climate much anymore. So there have been quite a few years that have passed where we don't really have an idea of, say, particularly how vulnerable Bangladesh is right now. How would you characterize the state of vulnerability in Bangladesh at this point in time?
So there's a quite number of climatic hazards that are affecting Bangladesh, but the difference that we see in last 10 years compared to last 20 years is extreme heat wave. That is affecting the entire country a lot. I just give you one example. The extreme heat wave last year, actually has broken 70 years of record in Bangladesh. So you can imagine 42.3 degrees centigrade temperature was the highest temperature in the northern part of Bangladesh. At least 30% of the coastal lands and offshore lands are being affected by salinity intrusion, and 30% of the lands are affected by salinity intrusion now. In 2023, 3 cyclonic events affected this country. It was, if you even analyze the cyclonic events frequency and intensity, let me just give you the frequency. Last 30 years, from 1990 to 2000, it was kind of like 1 in 2-3 years, and then from 2000 to 2010, it became like once in a year, and in 2019, it was 2 events, just in 2019, and in 2023, 3 cyclonic events. We see 6 out of 7 most vulnerable, climate vulnerable districts are also poorest districts.
So people need adaptation funds, they need mitigation funds. BRAC seems to focus on, for example, giving out loans to people for those particular reasons, but people also need money for when they lose homes, when their businesses are damaged, the loss and damage fund. I don't think BRAC really deals in that per se. I want to talk about that and your thoughts on where the world is at right now in terms of the loss and damage fund. The wealthier countries seem to be wanting to take a very market approach to this, a capitalist approach to this, which does not really help the people who need it, who did not cause the crisis. What is your view on exactly where we're going with the loss and damage fund, the very dangerous territory we are in that can actually make things worse for the poorest?
A country like Bangladesh is having just 3% of the adaptation fund of what they need. So it's just a reality. According to National Adaptation Plan, it shows they need at least $8.5 billion to address adaptation problems in Bangladesh per year from 2023 to 2050, and they are allocating just 2.5 to $3 billion. In fact, this financial year, they allocated less than $2 billion. People of Bangladesh do not emit much, but they are suffering a lot. They are victims and they are paying for it. We have 64 districts in Bangladesh. 19 districts are coastal districts, and these people are paying from their own income. Half of their income goes to just to address the climatic problems. So 97% needs are not filled in. So this is the problems that we are facing in this country.
Dr. Rabbani's point is clear. Bangladesh is doing what it can, but can't face the crisis alone. That's why BRAC isn't just focused on immediate solutions, but also passing knowledge on to the next generation through its university, which is eco-friendly.
When I come to the university, I feel really good. When I meet my friends, the green environment and everything, it makes me feel really good about my university. And I feel that in our country, Bangladesh, BRAC University is the most eco-friendly university you can ever see. So it makes me feel very proud to be here and to study here.
BRAC University has also upgraded to be a beacon of sustainability, from its open-air design to the energy-efficient layout, rooftop gardens and raw brick and concrete finish. The architecture is way ahead of the game. Inspired by the Sundarbans, the largest mangrove forest in the world, the campus brings nature and learning together. proving that green can be smart and beautiful.
Our outdoor area is naturally ventilated, so we don't need it. In classroom, we have the hybrid ventilation system. That's a new technology that we have invented over here. So if we consider the interior environment, then 26-degree temperature is the comfortable temperature. So what we have done, we have the low rotation speed, elevated air speed, so that the people over into the room, they can feel 26 degree, not the temperature 26 degree, but they can feel the 26 degree. In this way, we have reduced 40% of energy in the mechanical area.
Many of the students have been involved in a project to help clean up the water in Banani Lake. They're using different techniques across different subject areas to do some cleaning work, water and sanitation project. There are many students working on environmental projects. We have entrepreneurs, particularly female entrepreneurs from Vietnam and Cambodia as well as Bangladesh, working in a wider network on climate change projects, and it's inspired by this campus.
This campus is just one example of how BRAC is pushing the boundaries when it comes to environmental solutions. Another example is in Uttar Khan, about an hour outside central Dhaka, where something truly impressive sits, a house designed to withstand cyclones that often hit the region. It's built with natural materials, including wood and bamboo, which are engineered to survive powerful winds. The overall design also saves energy and uses bricks made from the very soil we walk on. We called up the project's lead designer.
We thought that we are going to design something that will holistically address not only the flood exposure, but also the vulnerability of the household. From that point, we designed a house that can float, that is amphibious, and you can see now that it's staying in the ground during the dry period. That's why we don't call it floating house, we call it amphibious house. That means it can float when it floods. Second is it can stand against every level of storm that is possible. That means I'm talking about the wind speed. At the same time, it addresses 13 out of 17 sustainable development goals, because climate exposure is chronic, but at the same time, vulnerability is also a very important dimension that we are tackling. And this house can generate its own fresh drinking water, harvesting from rain. At the same time, it is run by renewable energy.
Talk about the technology that allows this house to float.
Whenever it floods, it floats, and the weight of the house is 250,000 kilograms or 250 tons, and that buoyancy that we designed is 300 tons. So we have got 50-ton buffer so that the house can float properly. So it is designed in such a manner that when the water level reach up to that floor level, just 5 centimeter below the floor level, then the house will start float, and it will start float, and it will stand right there. It will not go away like a floating house or a floating boat, because it is anchored in 4 positions in 4 corners of the house, so that it can stay right there and float.
But on site with us was Roufa Khanum. She added the final touches to this beautiful home. She's also been lobbying the Bangladeshi government to financially support the project.
A lot of money went into making this house to show Bangladesh and the world the possibilities of a world you guys see coming. What do you think this place looks like in 20 years?
The main problem in Bangladesh is the finance, because we are the country of new innovation. We have lots of adaptation initiative in Bangladesh, but we can't scale up for the finance. So if we get proper finance and I think we can utilize the finance properly, then in 20 years, I think we can be a resilient Bangladesh.
As the years go by, the cyclones are getting worse, the flooding is getting worse. What happens in 20 years from now?
Developed countries are actually not listening to us. So if this is go on, I don't know whether Bangladesh will be Bangladesh or we will drown away. So I don't know, but One thing is that's why we are thinking about to adaptation and resilience. If I close my eyes, I see two different scenarios, that I am living in a house with a bamboo boundary. There are no house with this type of buildings. And another thing is that all the people have this type of house. So that is two scenario I can think after 20 years, based on the role of our government and of course the role of the global leaders.
We've got to wrap this episode, but you've seen that although Bangladesh is under severe climate strain, it isn't sitting on its laurels. It's taking daring and creative steps to keep up with our rapidly changing environment. I'll see you next time.